Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the Tumwater Public Works Committee meeting for Thursday, January 19th, 2023. And we'll begin with, do you have any changes to the agenda before I start? And no. And we'll go ahead.
Not from staff.
Heads. And then we'll go ahead with roll call. And we have representative, sorry, I got to change my name, Council Member Charlie Schneider here, and myself, Council Member Swarthout. Council Member Althauser has been excused from the meeting this morning. So our first action item today is approval of the minutes for the November 17th, 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, I'll second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, minutes approved. All right, now we're on to the acceptance of work with Black Hills Excavating for the Tumwater Hill Park Crosby Connector Project. And we'll be hearing from Don. Good morning.
Morning, council members. So yeah, this is the Crosby Trail Connector Park has been completed. Black Hills Excavation did the work on that job, and we've gone through and done our final punch list, and everything appears to be in order. So I will start with a presentation. Share screen. So is that coming through okay?
Yes.
Good, how about that? So yeah, Tumwater Hill Crosby Connector acceptance of work. This is where the trail is located. You can see trailhead is down on Crosby Boulevard, and the goal was to put in a trail to the existing trail system and eventually make a path or connect with a path to Tumwater Hill Elementary. So what and why? What we did is we tried to minimize the amount of disturbance of the natural ground out there. We walked the hillside, looked for areas that would create less disturbance of any of the natural ground, and also minimize the amount of material that we needed to bring in for the project. It was a switchback trail. We had to put in some steps to make the flatter parts more manageable. It's still it's quite steep. We installed the split rail fence at one section that was quite steep. And actually, from that location, it's got a pretty good view looking out over the hillside and the properties below. And then for why? So, it was to provide an access from the neighborhoods down at Crosby on up to Tumwater Hill Elementary, and also to the park, and also connect, other trail systems within that hillside. Part of the plan is to create and maintain a transportation system and enhance accessibility to city infrastructure. These are some before and after pictures. Some construction. The access was difficult for construction, so they rented this machine that brought gravel in, and they also, when they built the landing up top for the bench, they carried the concrete in these little buggies. This is a picture in the middle of the trail. See, we tried to just make enough room to get the crushed surfacing in, and also just to be able to do the steps. The design was designed and managed by engineering staff. Funding came from residents through the park impact fees. Black Hills contract, $152,120, and it was finally completed with $150,174. A little bit under budget, and I think we have a good system. It's connects the two, kind of adds to the trail system, make it a little bit more interesting for hikers, walkers, and trail runners. I think it'll be fun. Any questions?
Councilor Schneider, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay.
No.
Well, I thank you for this work. I know that this is something that has been in the works for quite a number of years. Because I remember when our HOA, we were very glad to give up that little piece of land to be able to have this project be part of the project. So, and then having been up and down that hill several times, it's nice to have, I've heard from the neighbors and they appreciate having the path. So I appreciate that work. Now, does it connect? There's a path that comes from the other development that's below the hill on the, I don't know if it's not Ridgeview. I'm trying to think of the name of that street that that one almost seems to go straight up as well. So it's would be on the right side that would go up the hill that pops out near the development at the top. Does this one even intersect with that one?
I'm not sure. I've not walked that one.
Okay.
I think there is a connection once you get up to the top, but that was never looked into to see if what would make those two connect. The one up by Tumwater Hill Park. Yeah, not sure.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just was curious because it is a fun place to hike. So someday, Councilmember Schneider, we just have to accidentally meet. So look at that. So, all right. So thank you for that presentation. Let's see, we go ahead and bring this up. So our recommended action is that the Public Works Committee recommend the City Council accept the Tumwater Hill Park Crosby Connector project as complete and authorize the release of the performance bond as soon as the laws of the state of Washington allow. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, I'll second. All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now let's see if I get this back to the other one. Where are we? Oh, come on. Try to get back to there we are. All right, so let's see. The next item up we'll be hearing from Dave Congizer about the source control program presentation.
Oh shoot, my camera is not focused on me here, no matter what I do here. So let me see here. Let me see if I can fix this real quick. Apologies here. Well, that's better. Okay. Good morning, council members. I was going to introduce the pollution source control inspection program that we're going to be launching here in 2023 as part of our permit, NPDES permit compliance. Let me share the screen here and walk you through this for this morning. So the pollution source control inspection program is a piece of the NPDES permit that was issued to the city of Tumwater by the Department of Ecology. We refer to this program as the source control program for short. So the requirements for through the permit include inspections of pollutant generating sources at publicly and privately owned facilities, as well as enforcing BMPs to control those pollutant generating activities. I'll get more into this piece in further slides. And then we have the ability to enforce local ordinances that are currently on the books. The BMPs that we are going to be enforcing are spelled out in our drainage design and erosion control manual in volume 4. So we refer to that for our BMP selection. So the goals of this program, reduce pollutants as they enter waterways through our stormwater system. That's the ultimate goal for water quality. But we also want to enhance these partnerships that we're going to be creating with our business community and help to support environmental awareness through this program with our business community. so they're more aware of some of the activities that they do and how they affect water quality in the city of Tumwater. So what businesses are we going to be looking at? The inventory criteria that we're going to be including in our inventory is connections to the stormwater system. That's a big one. So we're not going to be inspecting all businesses within the city of Tumwater, but mainly focused on the ones that are actually connected to our stormwater system. We used industry codes determined by the Department of Ecology to generate the inventory. Our annual goal through the permit is 20% of our inventory is going to be inspected annually. Currently, our inventory is estimated at 402 sites. This is kind of a moving target as we go forward. The inventory was generated in 2019, pre-pandemic, and so as we know, some of the businesses in the area have changed since that time. So as we go out and do our inspections, we're going to be refining this inventory as we go. So what are we going to be looking for when we do our inspections? Some of the inspection criteria we're going to be looking at is documentation and training. Are the sites, do they have their safety data sheets in place? Are their employees trained on spill response? Do they have a spill response and prevention plan? And general housekeeping, we're going to be looking at dumpster management. Are they, the dumpster lids closed? Are they managing their dumpster juice is the term for the liquid that comes out of a dumpster. Do they have a stocked spill kit? And do they, just do routine housekeeping, like routine sweeping and keeping their outdoor areas clean? And pardon me here. Some other inspection criteria we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking for washing activities that occur at businesses. So like commercial car washes and whatnot, like where does that wash water go? Does it go to the sanitary sewer? Does it go to the stormwater system? And are there BMPs in place if it does that protect our water quality if it does enter the stormwater system? Material transfer. The big one here is fueling activities. So what type of infrastructure do they have at the site for fueling activities? Is there a oil water separator in place? Is the fueling station covered with like a canopy? And then material storage, stockpiled material, is it covered? Are there BMPs in place for like secondary containment for liquid materials, like in the picture here, this oil changing station, the secondary containments, the vessels that are underneath the barrels and whatnot. So things like that we're going to be looking for, among others. There's a host of other criteria that we're going to be looking at. As far as like maintenance, depending on what industry that the business is, we're going to be looking at specific criteria for the businesses. Some of the resources that we've developed internally for this inspection program is we've worked with our GIS team to develop a geodatabase in ArcGIS to manage our inventory. We've created inspection forms and electronic inspection forms that we can use with tablets or phones using Survey 123 and field maps. These have kind of been a game changer for all of our inspections that we've been conducting in the stormwater program. The Washington Stormwater Center has developed a host of outreach material that we can develop for our own uses, and it's specific to industries that are pollutant generating. And then the inspection duties, Matthew Joseph, our stormwater inspector, he's going to be the lead inspector in the field for this program, but I'll be assisting him where I can through inspections or data management and whatnot. So we'll see how this goes with the amount of inventory we have, but this is going to be kind of a learning experience for us in year one. So our strategy for compliance, since this is a new program, I mean, we do have ordinances on the books that we can enforce, but we really want to focus on education for the initial go around with these inspections. A lot of the businesses have, they have their ways, set in stone, but they, we can work with them on tricks and tips and how to comply with our ordinances. And so that's going to be helping us build these relationships throughout this program as we do our site visits and whatnot. So that's going to be the emphasis for us, is the education piece. And then our hopeful outcomes for 2023, we want to refine this program and identify efficiencies and create efficiencies where we can to be better and to be more streamlined. We want to build deeper relationships within our community as we do our site visits and whatnot, and really, have a presence in the community that businesses can rely on us for help rather than enforcement activities. I think that's a strong strategy for us going forward. The overall goal is to also ensure permit and compliance. With our 20% goal of our inventory, I think that's achievable as long as we find some of those efficiencies. And then, we hope to continue to reduce pollutants that are entering our stormwater system and ultimately to end up in our waterways. So that is the introduction to the program. And if there's any questions, I can entertain those as well. Let's see here. Stop sharing.
Thank you. Councilmember, you've got a question. Go ahead, please.
I do, thank you. So thank you, David, for the presentation. So on your first slide, you showed where a business had a storm drainage pipe and it was just going out into an open area. And it sounds like you're suggesting that we're going to try to get businesses to connect to our city stormwater system. What cost is that? And are we covering any of that, or is the business is going to have to incur that cost?
So it's not a program that we're going to be looking to connect businesses to our stormwater system. The inventory criteria is businesses that are already connected to our stormwater system. So if a business is already discharging to our stormwater system, then it's included in our inventory matrix. If it's not connected to our stormwater system, then it doesn't need to be included into this program initially. So it's not a program that we're really looking to expand our stormwater system to businesses. It's more just inspecting the businesses that are already connected to our stormwater system.
So when we have new businesses that establish themselves in the city of Tumwater, are we going to require them to attach to our stormwater system at that point, or no? Okay.
Yeah, no. We're really focused in on just the existing businesses that are connected, and new businesses that are coming into the city and developments and whatnot. We're really trying to get them to infiltrate on site, and so they're not connected to our stormwater system. So that's the goal.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Well, thank you for that. I was wondering where that connected. It seemed like, what? They don't have to, but I understand when you're talking about the infiltration piece of it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then my question, we haven't been doing this. This is a new program that we haven't had the opportunity to do this in the past. So now this will be something that so it is a new program for us.
Correct. Yeah, this was required by the Department of Ecology to roll out in January of 2023. And so we've been working this last year to develop our inventory, to develop some of our resources for inspections and whatnot. So it's been a big lead up until this point. So we're going to be out in the community this month and going forward, doing routine inspections. We're hoping to do about 3 a week as our goal, and that would put us at our 20% that we're required to do. So, and as we refine that inventory number, we'll kind of adjust accordingly. But our goal is to do 3 businesses a week.
And then remind me how often. So once they're done, how often do we go back, or is it just like a one-time thing, or how often do we go back?
Yeah, it's really going to depend on the business itself. If it's a high potential to generate pollutants, then we might visit them a little more often than say a bookstore that might not be, you know, a high potential to generate. It just really depends. And then you know, based on their inspection, you know, if they've really got some things that they got to work on, you know, we might pay a little more attention to them as opposed to somebody else that's really got their stuff together that, you know, is well on their way to compliance. So it's really going to depend. But, you know, my hope is that, you know, we're going to, based on the 20% threshold, within 5 years, we'll have all of our inventory inspected, and then we can start weeding out some of the more high potential generators of pollution generating activities. So.
All right. Well, that's a good presentation, and welcome to the program. So it's a great addition, and it's nice to have the electronic tools to be able to make your job easier as well. So
yeah, that's been a huge game changer for us. So really appreciate our GIS team for that.
all right. So thank you for that presentation. Let's see. Next up, we have Carrie Gillum talking about the corrosion control program update.
Hello and good morning. Everybody see my screen?
Yep.
You see a presentation? Okay. So I'm here to talk about both the corrosion control study that was done and our lead and copper sampling that we completed in the last year. So this, first of all, I'm going to give a little background about where this is all coming from. So the lead and copper rule is where our corrosion control lead and copper sampling is mostly based on. So this is done by the US EPA. They're the ones that set the standards, and it started regulation in 1991. It's under the 40 CFR Part 141 Subpart 1. We all call it kind of the lead and copper rule, or LCR for short. Makes it nice and easy. The rule requires systems to monitor their drinking water at customer taps. That's just part of the rule that I'm going to specifically talk about today. And then if concentrations exceed an action level, then systems must undertake additional actions. So we have the Washington Department of Health that oversees these standards. So they're the ones that we report all of our sampling results to. And then they also are the ones that, you know, we work with in order to determine what actions and treatments that are required. So why are we concerned about, you know, lead and copper? Elevated levels of lead and copper can cause severe illness and health problems. Lead is of greater concern, especially because it even just any amount can be a problem, especially with pregnant women and young children. And so this is the reason why we also keep a close eye on it. So the city of Tumwater has been doing tap sampling since 1992. Our first one was in 1992. We had elevated levels above the action level for copper, but our lead was actually below. But that spurred us to have to do a study. And once that study was completed, it was determined that we had, our groundwater here is kind of naturally acidic in nature, and we needed to have some type of treatment in order to control that. So we decided on aeration, and that began in 1999. And after that aeration began, there was a few tap sampling that had occurred, and we were below the action levels for the lead and the copper. So it was a successful treatment. And that made us eligible in 2004 for reduced monitoring, which meant we only needed to collect 30 samples based on our population instead of 60, which is what the normal number is. So where can lead and copper in our drinking water come from? It comes from our pipes primarily, anything from mains to service lines to the internal plumbing in our home. And there's even fixtures, valves, meters, and other connectors that this comes from. You know, a lot of times the lead that you see is from brass fixtures, within, you know, like home plumbing, as well as like the lead tin solder used for copper pipes in the home plumbing. The city has no history right now of installing or encountering lead in our distribution system. So right now we're not expecting it, but you know, it's also been a long history, so we are keeping an eye out for it. So ways to reduce lead and copper in drinking water is through corrosion control. Water interacts with metals, and those metals can then be released into the water, and that's called corrosion. So one of the things to do is control pH to control the corrosion. And the optimal pH that we would like to have for our water is between 7.5 and 8.3. So our city controls aeration through pH through aeration at our 2 treatment sites, which is Bush and the Palermo water treatment plants.
Carrie, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Sure.
Can you move that back 2 slides, please? The chart you had as far as that one there. So I can't see, it looks like 2019, and I assume the next one's 2020, but I can't make out the year. But it seemed like it skyrocketed as far as the lead. Is there some concern about that? Or why did that happen?
It could be because there is some variation in the households that we do end up sampling, because it is on a volunteer basis. So it could be differences in the system, which I can also talk a little bit to when we talk about our corrosion control or corrosion control study. I mean, it looks like it's skyrocketing. It is increasing, but it's still well below the at the action level. So, you know, we're registering in 2022, we were at 8.4, but the action level is 15. So we are still at half the action level for the 90th percentile. And you can see that through the past, there has been other variations, and that sometimes has to do with a little bit with where the sampling locations have been, what households have been, but also some of the treatments that have changed. Like we did introduce chlorine at some point, you know, in like the early 2000s, that also affects the chemistry of the water. And therefore you could have different amount of corrosion control that's occurring.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure. Okay. So yes, how we ensure our corrosion control is working is through our customer tap sampling program. So every 3 years, we're required to collect samples. Right now, we are still currently at a reduced sampling rate of 30 samples from a tier 1 home. Tier 1 homes are primarily based on age of 1983, 1987. They are considered, that age range is considered the highest amount of like copper pipes with lead solder is potential. And so that's why those homes are targeted. However, if we do not get enough volunteers from a tier 1 home, then we can also collect from the other 2 tiers. So, you know, it's kind of really dependent on who we get as volunteers for that year and who's willing to allow us to do the testing and sampling within their home. So for our 2022 lead and copper sampling, we had a pretty good response. We opened it up pretty broadly. So we had 230 people initially volunteer, and we reached out through social media, newsletter articles, and mailings. We did some direct mailings, especially to our tier 1 homes that we were able to identify. But once we were all completed and all the water samples were collected, we had 138. We do have some attrition of people, you know, it's like if they're not available or, you know, just loss of interest over time. So we didn't get all 230 people to necessarily sample, but we still had a huge amount because we do struggle a lot trying to get even the 30 samples for compliance, trying to get that number of people. So we had 30 for compliance, 108 for investigative. So the results of our sampling for our 30 compliance samples, we were able to get tier 1, tier 3, and other homes to participate in that. And from what we have to do in order to be in compliance with the lead and copper rule is our 90th percentile must be less than the action level. So the action level for copper is 1300 parts per billion, and for lead is 15 parts per billion. So you can see from my table here, we had no issue with copper. Copper was well below the 90th percentile. We had 0 homes that exceeded the action level. And lead, we were below the 90th percentile as well, so we're in compliance with the lead as well. But we did have 3 homes that had exceeded above the action level. But no matter, the bottom line is that Tumwater met compliance for the lead and copper rule for 2022. So this is showing all of our samples together. We only, needed to report on those 30 to DOH, but these are additional samples that we had taken, and there was a reason behind it. So I just wanted to kind of summarize that, we had nothing that was above the action level for copper. None of our homes were tested above for copper. We had 1 additional out of our investigative samples that were above the action level on lead. And what we did is we ended up doing follow-up sampling for those 4 homes. And it turned out that all but 1 came back below the action level. So some of the reasons that it may be that the other ones were higher in the beginning was we were talking to some of the people who are sampling, and they let their water sit too long. There's a certain criteria that needs to be met in order to take that sample. And so once we did the re-education and had them resample, their concentration was actually lower. And then the one house that did come up, above the action level a second time, they believe that they probably, did have like lead solder in their home because it was just that old and they hadn't done a retrofit. So it's very encouraging to see that. Basically we had 1 home overall after resampling in the entire 138 that would be above the action limit. And we took those additional samples to help with our corrosion control study, to have a better understanding of the entire distribution system, because the additional 108 investigative samples were all ages, all over the city. So it was kind of more spatially spread out, as well as it wasn't confined to that, 1983 to 1987 timeframe, because we really wanted to understand, is there something else going on in the system that we don't know about? And the reason for the corrosion control study was in 2019, the city became a large public water system. And a large public water system is defined by the number of residential and non-transient population that's being served. So if you're over 50,000, you're considered a large public water system. And so we qualified, we graduated. So as a large system, we are now required by the LCR to demonstrate optimal corrosion control. So through that, it requires a study and a report done by an engineer. So in 2021, we contracted with HDR Engineering to conduct the study and complete a report. And as of November 22, we were able to complete, the report was completed, and it was submitted to the DOH for review. So now it's just a matter of them reviewing it and determining what steps we have to do to obtain optimal corrosion control. So here are some of the report findings. So aeration installed at the Bush and Palermo treatment plants is giving the higher pH that we wanted, and a more stable corrosion chemistry. So they're being effective for corrosion control. Our airport wells, however, have a lower pH, and it's because they don't have corrosion treatment. Right now it's just straight groundwater, and as I had stated before, our natural groundwater is a little more acidic. It's below that optimal pH level that we want. And then also minimal blending is taking place in the system. So unfortunately, we can't get some of these waters to mix together to kind of equal out the pH that we have. So one of the positives though is that right now all of our lead and copper corrosion are below the action level, so we are in compliance. But one of the concerns that the report did point out was there is a new trigger level trigger level that's coming out as of 2021, because the lead and copper rule is revised, and that's 10 parts per billion. And so unless there are changes made to the airport wells, we could end up hitting that trigger level, because we did have 2 years in the past where we were above 10 or at 10. So overall, the variable water quality and lack of blending means the system is not optimized for corrosion control through the compliance with the LCR. So the recommendations that HDR has given, which was put in the report, is that we do treatment at the airport wells. This can be done one of two ways. Either we do aeration like we have at our current treatment plants, or we can add a chemical called caustic soda. A secondary one would be to decrease the airport well use so that we have less of this water that's interacting in our system. So the next steps that we are looking for is currently the study is underway by DOH. They will determine what needs to happen based on what was recommended in the report by HDR. Treatment is most likely going to be required for the airport wells if we're going to continue to use them. And right now we use them seasonally, and they're going to have to probably continue to be used seasonally until we start bringing other sources online. And so the DOH has 6 months to review this. So probably by spring, I'm hoping to, have some additional feedback from them and then see where, this is going to take us. So thank you for your time. And is there any additional questions?
I'm still writing notes.
I have a couple questions, if that's okay, Chair.
Oh, please do. I can't see you yet.
Okay, thank you, Carrie, for the presentation.
Sure.
I have 2 questions. First of all, how does the city recruit homeowners to participate in the sampling program?
Pretty much what has been done in the past is been through direct mailing. Like I said, for this year, we tried a little different. We started reaching out early too, to begin with. In January of last year, I guess now, because we're in 2023, we started posting in the newsletter, like Inside the City for one thing, and then Tumwater on Tap. We also put it in our water quality report, which goes out to all residents in July. So that was one way. And then for any of the homes that we knew were tier 1 homes, we sent out a postcard to them that was asking for volunteering for participation in the program. We also had, let's see here, we had put out, I believe, a social media post through Facebook that requested some volunteering as well. So we tried a few different routes that were a little different than previous, because previously it used to be, I believe, just letters that were sent directly to homeowners that were within that tier 1, because we were directly trying to identify tier 1 homes.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you using just not social media, but reaching out directly through mail. So I appreciate that. And so my other question is, and it goes back to tier 1. You mentioned the 1983 to the 1987. And the high levels of copper and lead. If I was a homeowner and I happen to live in one of those homes that were built in that time period, should I be concerned about the water I consume?
If you don't know what your what your construction is, I would definitely say look into it. We do have recommendations. I mean, one of the things that is easy enough for people to do, whether or not you don't know what's in your home, if you want to, protect yourself from copper and lead, is doing a flush first thing in the morning before you capture the water to drink. That's one of the things that we instruct people, even when they do have like above the action level. That's some of the education that we give, because a lot of it has to do with stagnant water that sits in the pipes and causes then it to interact with those pipes and absorb all those metals. So if you flood, it's like first flush. If you get rid of the water in the morning, let it flush for a minute or so, then it will allow that water that's been sitting stagnant in those pipes overnight to get, the highest concentration of metals released out, and you're not drinking that and consuming that. I also do know there's the filtration devices that are out there. There are also people that were interested in participating in this program, but they weren't necessarily being served by our water, because the word got out, of course, and not everybody is served by city water. And so I was able to give instruction. There are tests that you can do at home and send off to a lab that you can pick up at a Home Depot or Lowe's or hardware store, or even order online. And they're like between $20 and $50, just for lead in particular. The more analytes that you want to have tested for will cost more. But, if anything, that's what I would tell people. It's like, find out what is in your water, or find out what is in the construction of your home, and then, maybe have it tested if you are concerned. But then there are a few things that you can do just to be safe. If you don't know, just flushing your tap can be something that can be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that clarification.
Sure.
What about, like my fridge has a water filter, that feature, does that help at all? As far
Most
as
water
this?
filters, I would say, if they're carbon-based water filters, usually take care of things like lead. But I would have to say you'd have to look at whatever that filter says on it, and see what it filters for. And like, one of the most important things we have to tell everybody is make sure you change it regularly. It has a lifespan on it. It stops working. It can't hold any more of the contaminants after a certain point. And so changing that filter out is the most important part you can do for yourself. So.
It is interesting changing that because of the color that comes out. So yeah, it's surprising. So back to the airport wells, is there, we're looking at that as far as treatment goes, but waiting until DOH says something or, recommends that something happen at that point, or?
Yeah, so one of the things that we know is that here in the future, we're going to be bringing on new sources like the Brewery well field. And so one of the things that we're wondering about is the timing. As we bring on more sources, we're probably going to be able to bring our airport well field more offline. But then there's still, of course, that question then of we may have a reliance on that well field no matter in the future. And so there is the potential then that, what are we going to need to do in order to be able to maintain usage of that? Well, treatment is going to be needed based on what the report is saying. So yeah, from what I understand, it's DOH is pretty flexible and they want to work with their water systems in order to try to find the best solution. So it may be a matter of we need to determine as well as ourselves of, do we want to go with aeration? Do we want to go with chemical treatment? There was also through the HDR report, some potentials about, because all of our airport wells are located not next to each other, like our Bush and our Palermo well fields are very centralized. These are kind of scattered a little bit. They've got some distance between them. And so they even came up with like centralized, decentralized, and hybrid plans, kind of a very high level overview of what those costs could be and what it would look like. There's new technologies that are out there. So we have a little bit of an idea then of what we can move forward with as we have these conversations with DOH. But we are still kind of waiting at this point to see, okay, what do they have to say? But probably with the understanding that, yes, we're going to have to move forward with some type of treatment because 100%, cut off of that water system is probably not going to happen, especially here in the near future. We're still going to need to rely on it until we get our other sources online.
So, and the cost of approximate cost of increasing or adding the aeration to that, what are we looking at?
Oh boy.
Okay. Oh, you can get back to me. I'm sorry. I was just curious.
Yeah, it was in, I believe
Is it
it
a
was in the report.
gazillion dollars? So are
Not
we
quite
looking-
that much.
Like with our
I was-
septic conversion, it's a gazillion dollars. So,
I was thinking it's like the hundreds of thousands range.
okay.
It's not inexpensive, and
Okay.
certainly a retrofit is more expensive than planning from a new facility like with the Brewery well field when that comes online. And the timing this year is actually good. We have the CFP, the capital planning processes that we're going to be going through. We'll have theoretically a response from Department of Health, getting a better understanding of which direction they'd like us to go. And then we get to determine, we'll come back to council, to kind of evaluate what those options look like, whether it's, and I think aeration would be preferred because, we have a history of non-chemical addition to our water system, beyond chlorine, sodium hypochlorite, which we use for that for disinfection. So if we can get away with aeration, and I know back in the 2000s, early 2000s, when we installed aeration, it was a very expensive multi-million-dollar process for the Bush and Palermo well fields. the technologies have improved. There are much, more cost-effective solutions for us to install aeration at, say, a remote facility like well 15. So we'll be bringing forward, probably in collaboration with our consultant HDR, to identify what those costs look like, develop plans, for moving forward, and that'll all happen later this year as we work through our capital facility process. Regardless, any changes won't take that long. I'm sorry, they will take some time. Department of Health is not going to require us to do this, say, immediately. They're going to give us time to phase this in and do this work. Mostly because, as you've seen the results earlier that Carrie presented, yes, we're not optimal, but we're still, in compliance with, the regulation as it stands today.
Right, and that was
Thank
one of
you.
the big reasons why having those investigative samples was actually very beneficial. And then the follow-up sampling that we did, that was all included in the report. We were able to show that, we only had one out of all these
Mhm.
samples that was actually above an action level, which is not even a, it's not one, it's just an action level. It's not like a set, or like this is bad or this is good.
Mhm.
So.
Oh, thank you. Well, we do have very good, nice tasting water. And so we do have good water around here. So thank you for this report and what we're doing to maintain that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Do you have any other questions, council member? Good. Okay. All right. So let's move on to Mary Heather Ames, who will be talking about the transportation grants.
Good morning. All right, I believe you can see what you need to see. As Councilmember Swarthout said, I am here to introduce 3 transportation projects. Each one of these has either been awarded grant funding or we believe it is likely, and I'll explain each one in more detail as we look at it. So first up, let's talk about the X Street roundabout. This is the next project in the Capitol Boulevard Corridor Plan implementation. You, I am sure, are very familiar with the project to the north at the Trosper intersection. But this project involves converting the X Street intersection from a signalized intersection to a roundabout. Design was completed as part of the Capitol Boulevard Israel to M Street design, which was also partially grant funded, although we're not going over the details of that this time. For this project, as I said, we'll be putting in a roundabout. Things that made this competitive as far as the grant funding is concerned is that we're providing pedestrian and bicycle facilities. There's less idling with a roundabout, which means better air quality. It's naturally traffic calming while keeping the flow of traffic moving, and overall our safety increases. As I've probably said to you lots of times before, one of the best things about a roundabout is the decrease in conflict points. You don't end up with T-bone type crashes in a roundabout or head-ons. They're much more glancing angles, which is better for all. Of course, we don't want any crashes, but if we can keep them less severe, that's awesome. So as far as funding, as I mentioned before, design was funded separately with the corridor design. We received, in previous year, we received the first line of right-of-way funding, so the 866,470. Then this year, TRPC, as a region, we did really well in keeping up with the requirements of the funding that goes through TRPC. So we were able to receive some additional funding that decreased the match that we needed. So still right of way being estimated at 5 million, but increasing the grant amount from that 866, increasing it by 269,500. So that was pretty great. And then we applied for construction funding and were successful. So for that, the total construction estimated cost is 3.4 million, and the grant funding total that we were awarded totals 2.941 million. This was split between STBG, which is a Surface Transportation Block Grant. People sometimes refer to it as STP, but Surface Transportation Funds, and TAP or TA, which is the Transportation Alternatives. So we were able to say, hey, this has enough pedestrian and bicycle portion of the project to support some of the funding coming from that grant source. So together the grant funding is 2,941,000, and I think I already said that. I apologize. The next project is the Tumwater Boulevard interchange. You're familiar with this location, I imagine, it being the closest interchange to City Hall. We also get a lot of traffic through this. Both our daytime population and our total official population use this interchange quite a bit. It's also an interchange that is crucial to the development of properties around it. We know that there is new housing, retail, and commercial properties and industrial, the port, all around this interchange, which will be using it. And so we know that it needs this focus. The project was started, I found records that this project was started back in 2004, actually, with design and permitting, pre-design and pre-permitting type activities. We applied for a Tiger grant in 2009. So this project has a long history. In my time here, which has only been about 3.5 years, the city staff have renewed the focus on this interchange. So we've built upon what was completed years ago and have sort of broken the project into phases strategically for the completion, making it a little bit more bite-sized chunks. So as I said earlier, the project is necessary for the development of the land around here. And we believe that it will be beneficial to the people who work in this area as well. And the reason I'm saying these things is that these were points that made us more viable to the funding agency. And in this case, it was the Transportation Improvement Board. And I'll talk a little bit more about them in my next presentation. This project will be revisiting in my next presentation, but the grant amount is 2.25 million. Our match, which is made up of both developer mitigation fees and local funding, or city funding, is 4 million for a total project cost of 6.25 million. And the next and final project, this one is a Safe Routes to School project. It focuses on walking and biking to Michael T. Simmons, which is roughly to the southwest of the 2nd and Linwood intersection, which you're seeing on your screen here. This project is not a given. We applied and it is in the list of recommended projects for the legislature. So we'll know by the time that session ends whether or not this has been successful. But I'd like to give you an update to it now so you know what's coming. We're looking at adding bike lanes and sidewalk along 2nd Avenue to the north, particularly from this intersection. We also have looked at ways to make the intersection safer for the pedestrians and bicycles who are crossing. So shortening the crossing distances and decreasing vehicle speeds through the intersection. We have affectionately titled this schematic the Blobabout, also known as the Peanut. but we're looking at being really mindful of how to make this intersection work for not only vehicles, but also for the potentially small children who are using this intersection. So
Mary,
yes,
so the peanut, is that a solid, will that be a solid will that be like what we do with roundabouts? Will that be a raised section?
it's similar. We may
Mhm.
end up doing a combination. So this is definitely a schematic, but we may end up
Okay.
doing a combination of raised and paint depending on what works best. We do have another special user, so to speak, with the fire station on the southwest corner as well. So of course, we'll want to make sure that the intersection works for those larger trucks and
Mhm.
buses, of course, because the school's bus entrance is on the on Linwood.
Mhm.
But we also
Right.
want to we recognize that those are special cases and they're not the majority of the vehicles that go through here. So we want to make it work for them while also making it safer for the children who are walking and biking. So yeah, more details to come on this one, and it will be an interesting process to go through. I said before, this is in the recommended list. However, it's not a done deal. I heard a sort of joking story from one of the people at WashDOT saying that other jurisdictions have, based on their place on the list, prepared the obligation paperwork to get started on their project, and they cautioned me not to get that excited about it, but we will be ready. We believe we have good chances on this one. So our grant request was just over 2,115,000. We estimate the total project at 3.6 million. Much of the match is for the paving portion. We at the same, as long as we're there, we're gonna do the paving on 2nd Avenue. So that match will much of it be able to come from the Transportation Benefit District funds to complete the 2nd Avenue paving, which is really exciting. I was just driving there yesterday, yesterday, and it's definitely going to be an improvement when we get that done. So at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but as a reminder, this one is not for action. The next one I will have a requested action.
All right, council member, do you have some questions? These are really great projects, and yeah, I know it takes a while, but someday we'll see those happen. So I appreciate the work and that and all the work that from the staff, that we're able to be able to secure these grants for the city. So that's really awesome to be able to have that funding for us. So thank you very much on that. So yes, all right. So let's go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the good news is that these with the funding means that they are happening sooner than later, which is great.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really that, yeah, all of them are critical. You think about where our choke points and that four-way stop at Linwood is always interesting. And yeah, so people don't know how to like wait their turn. So anyway, I go too far. All right, so let's see. Then we'll have you, the next thing up, we have the fuel tax agreement with the Transportation Improvement Board for Tumwater Boulevard interchange. And we're up again.
All right. Once again, going through the process of sharing the screen. All right. So in order to fit the text on the screen, I have knowingly used acronyms here, which kind of cracks me up. This is the FTA with TIB for TWB interchange, but we'll go to the next slide, which explains each one. So the fuel tax agreement is the agreement that we are hoping to sign. It's a good name for what is the grant agreement, accepting the grant funding from TIB, which is Transportation Improvement Board. And You may be familiar with them. They fund high priority transportation projects in communities throughout the state. They are their grant programs are funded by the 3 cents of the statewide gas tax, which is why this is called a fuel tax agreement. And of course, TWB is Tumwater Boulevard, which intersects I-5 and is the nearest interchange to City Hall. So as we covered in the last item, staff applied for grant funding to cover improvements to the Tumwater Boulevard interchange. This project is phased with a roundabout at either on-off ramp intersection and eventually some bridge widening as the final phase. The first step is the roundabout at the northbound on-off ramps. And this is the project that we have applied for and been awarded grant funding. You see here the same numbers in the last presentation, but as a reminder, the grant amount is 2.25 million. Our match being made up of developer mitigation fees and local funds is 4 million for a total estimated project cost of 6.25 million. So as far as what's next, we're hoping for some action about the signing of the agreement, and then we'll be able to move forward with the project. So I would be happy to answer any questions after I remind you that for this item, staff requests the Public Works Committee recommend the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to sign the fuel tax agreement with the Transportation Improvement Board for Tumwater Boulevard interchange.
Councilmember Snyder, do you have any questions? No? Okay. Would you like to make the motion then? Or
Yeah, I could do
So
that.
you-
That's not a problem. I'd like to make a
well,
motion.
do we need to
that the
repeat it?
pub-
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Can we say so moved, or do we need to repeat it? That's a good question.
You don't need to repeat it.
Then I'll say so moved.
And I'll second that. And we'll take the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. These are some exciting things that are going to be happening around here. This is great. So do we have any other items that we need to discuss today? I was curious, I
We do not.
haven't been through the work yet that's on Capitol Boulevard. So I've heard some people that tried to go through. So anyway, so how's that going? Is it just a quick thing? How's it going so far?
Well, they haven't really accomplished a whole lot of work because right now they're focusing on mobilization and erosion
Mhm.
control, but no hiccups so far. I believe next week is when we're going to start to see more significant impacts to traffic as they start to work on sewer and concrete panel removal, because there is the concrete panels from the old Highway 99 route in there, and we are removing them because we needed the space for the utility work.
Okay, all right, well, good. Things are happening around Tumwater. Thanks you for all your work on this and really appreciate the presentations today. So if there isn't anything else for us, then I will call the Thursday, January 19th, 2023 Public Works Committee adjourned today. Have a good day, y'all. So thank you.